For as long as I can remember, the world I grew up in has revolved around the fashion concept of what it means to be a man and a woman.
Men in our society were depicted as strong, brave, hardworking, someone who takes the hard yards to provide for the family.
Women were seen as keepers of neatness, skilled in homemade cuisines, and raised to man the household.
These have been some of the basic concepts
Of Samoan men and women, until now. In a country like Samoa, it's easy to let our culture define what it means to be an ideal man and woman. A lot of our perspectives on life are often based on how we were socialized in our community. However, this may have changed over the years. What do I mean by this? Although we are a small island in the Pacific, our people still have access to the outside world through social media. And so our Samoan culture isn't the only thing influencing people these days. Not to mention the different areas of academics, cultures, and religion, which all have different traits of idealism. So what is Samoa's concept of an ideal man and woman? And how is it different from our parents' generation? To help get a better understanding and deeper insight, our media team went around asking different people of the community what their take is on the subject.
I think I'd say that an ideal man would have to be respectful, open-minded, not afraid to stick to his own opinion, but his opinion has to be based on facts and experiences of his own.
As an ideal man, I'll say someone who's really adaptive to the changes in our modern life.
The way I see it, an ideal man or woman these days would be how we were brought up to honor our parents or elders.
I think your family is such an important part of who you are as Samoan that you kind of just can't take them out of the equation when you're trying to choose the right spouse for you, the ideal man or woman. Your family's opinions will always eventually come first.
To be an ideal man and ideal woman, we have to learn and we have to put into practice the respect and the value of cultures that we have learned during our early age.
There was only one man of the house, that was my old man. Looking at him, being responsible for us, taking care of us, even though we didn't have that much, he still, put food on the table, even gave me a good education, which is why I think the ideal man was a family man at first.
You're able to carry out your certain gender roles. So if you're a man, you need to be able to protect, provide, and raise a family. And same goes for culture. If you can't do certain cultural practices, you're kind of shunned upon.
Is one that knows his responsibilities within his family and outside of his family. He knows his priorities and sets his priorities straight.
Trying to go with the flow of what 21st century is in terms of being a very productive person in a family, trying to help out with the family and trying to be understandable. People in the old days, they had to do things themselves, grab this from the store and walk to the store, and now we have cars.
We have Seki Eats, Uber Eats, and everything. Everything can just come straight to you. So I think it takes a lot of commitment and time.
An ideal woman in this day and age is a God-fearing woman. It's a woman who puts God above all things. So it's God, others, than herself.
I think I would like to encourage that more girls would look up to women who are more headstrong and more passionate about getting what they want, but not in terms of where they disrespect others.
I think the way for us to become the ideal person is to be understanding and more adaptive of the problems and the difficulties that we know that future generations are going to face.
So we covered the viewpoints of the young people and members of the community. But to get a deeper insight, we asked academic leaders of different backgrounds for their point of view.
My ideal man or woman in academia is somebody who is driven and motivated. An ideal woman for me in academia is somebody who achieves her goals and somebody who can help others to achieve theirs.
But in the various careers that I've had, particularly in the police and interviewing a wide or dealing with a wide range of people, is the ability to be able to understand people. You can't have a stereotypical view of any particular group of people at all.
You know the golden rule in the Bible that I think applies to everyone, and that's universal, that you just have to do unto others what you want done unto you. And there's no gender in that statement.
I've grown up with only two fears in my life: fear God and fear my dad. I was born here in Samoa, raised in New Zealand, and there was only one goal that my dad gave me, and I feared him so much that I achieved those goals. And that was be the best you can be, go as far as you can education-wise, and be a leader.
I think the biggest thing is the ability to communicate. From my era, you have these stereotypes again of the male being the breadwinner. The female was the person who stayed at home, looked after the family, didn't go to work, and the men could not express their feelings. And so from then till now, the ability for people to actually communicate and communicate their feelings, how they're feeling professionally, how they're feeling personally, and having a mutual understanding across the two genders is, I think, a big thing in terms of what an ideal person should be.
Like I think in Samoa, when you go to school, the expectations are not as divided. The curriculum is for everybody, it's universal, so your roles are more focused on your academic achievement rather than your gender. I grew up with grandmothers who were very traditional. So of course the way we dressed when we were growing up was very conservative. You have to be very proper and show the elegance expected of a Samoan or a young Samoan to my type. That was the foundation of what shaped my identity as a woman, but of course that has changed.
My dad had driven me so hard in the sense that I became the type of person who was skeptical about, what I was being taught about God. I wanted to learn more about God through my own eyes, not through the eyes of a whaiwhiao, because they were all men, because I wasn't hearing it from the whaiwhiao's wife. Her point of view was contaminated or corrupted by her husband, because everything that came from the whaletua was always from the husband. It was only the whaiwhiao I thought, they preach about righteousness and justice, and yet they will only allow a man to stand up there. So to have this view of an ideal academic as someone who is motivated, driven, sets goals, achieves it no matter what. If I consider my dad's generation, his ideal woman is still the same. The goal is to get married. So for my dad, I think it hasn't changed. But for me, my ideal person, man or woman, is somebody who is independent, who can provide for his or her dependents. With women particularly, who get married, leave their jobs, go and have children, that's a risk, because if they're not treated well in the families that they've made sacrifices for, they tend to stay in that environment because they've got nowhere else to turn.
Things are always transitional. Even traditions are always in transition. Nothing ever stays the same. So nowadays, we have access to information more than ever. We are being exposed to global cultures. A lot of women that I know, and even myself, are very self-sufficient. Women not only are expected to have a career, to be well educated, to be leaders, all of these expectations are additional to the roles that they have been playing over the years, which is to be maternal, to look after the family home. The concept of an ideal woman based on popular perspectives, I think, has changed. There's more that's expected of them.
The young people do have access and are questioning the traditional Samoan values, when I think, in fact, they can both help out. Today, you have issues such as gender equity, social inclusion. You have things like LGBTQ, which is all suppressed, all hidden in those days. It probably contributed to things like suicide in those days. Now it's a lot more open and a lot more open for discussion.
There's a saying that talks about how when you educate a man, you help one family. But when you educate women and girls, you help raise the living standards of a whole community. I don't really focus so much on what's detrimental and what's bad in life. I think life is too short and we need to focus on what's positive.
Okay, so for me, an ideal man or woman in this day and age is somebody who is self-sustaining and who can provide for his or her dependents.